Next tonight, police are appealing for information about a missing woman from Welling who was only reported missing last month but hasn't actually been seen since September. Officers are carrying out multiple inquiries into the disappearance of 54-year-old Nazir Corelli, and a man in his 50s has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Well, our correspondent Simon Harris is in Welling for us now. Simon, what more do we know about this case?
Well, for Naz Corelli's neighbours, the first indication that anything was wrong came yesterday when police cars appeared outside her house in Welling. A police tent was put up on the drive along with a portable toilet, and throughout today scenes of crimes officers in those familiar blue overalls have been going in and out of the house. Scotland Yard says Mrs Corelli was reported missing on February the 28th. That's 11 days ago. But in fact, she may have disappeared as long ago as September last year. Now, local people I've spoken to today said they couldn't recall when they last saw her, but she had been a familiar face in her road.
I didn't know her by name. I didn't know her name, but she was always very friendly and smiling. When a dog I used to have that sadly passed away, I used to walk past and she'd always sort of say hello and just smile. She was always a very, very friendly person.
Earlier I spoke to Mrs Corelli's daughter Aishagul, who not surprisingly is desperate for news. She's posted an appeal on Facebook saying, "My mum Naz Corelli is missing. Please help me find my mum." And she goes on to ask anyone with information to contact the police. The detective in charge of the hunt for Mrs Corelli says multiple inquiries have been made by his officers since she was reported missing. He's keeping an open mind, but at the same time, the man who in his 50s who was arrested yesterday is being held on suspicion of murder.
Thanks very much, Simon.
Next tonight, police are appealing for information about 54-year-old Nazir Corelli from Welling, who was reported missing last month but hasn't been seen since September. A man in his 50s has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Our correspondent Simon Harris was at New Scotland Yard for us earlier this evening.
For Naz Corelli's neighbours, the first indication that anything was wrong came yesterday when police cars appeared outside her house in Welling. A tent was put up on the drive along with a portable toilet, and throughout today scenes of crime officers in their familiar blue overalls have been going in and out of the house. Scotland Yard says she was reported missing on February the 28th, 11 days ago, but in fact may have disappeared as long ago as September last year. Local people I spoke to said they couldn't recall when they last saw her, but said she had been a familiar face in her road.
I didn't know her by name. I didn't know her name, but she was always very friendly and smiling. When a dog I used to have that sadly passed away, I used to walk past and she'd always sort of say hello and just smile. She was always a very, very friendly person.
Earlier I spoke to Mrs Corelli's daughter Aishagul, who not surprisingly is desperate for news. She's posted an appeal on Facebook saying, "My mum Naz Corelli is missing. Please help me find my mum." And she goes on to appeal for anyone with information to contact the police. The detective in charge of the hunt for Mrs Corelli says his officers have made multiple inquiries since she was reported missing. He says he's keeping an open mind and her disappearance is being treated as a missing person investigation. But at the same time, the man in his 50s who was arrested yesterday is being held on suspicion of murder.
Well, next this evening, a moped rider who is believed to have killed schoolboy Nathaniel Burrell in Stockwell is still on the run. Today, prosecutors at the Old Bailey said the killer was wanted for what they described as a targeted and premeditated shooting. Our correspondent Simon Harris is outside New Scotland Yard for us. Simon, what else was said today?
Lucrezia, it's just over a week since Nathaniel was shot dead on the Studley estate in Stockwell where he lived. And although 2 people have been charged with his murder, it appears that none of the suspects in custody include whoever pulled the trigger. Omar Prempar, who's 32, the first person to be charged, appeared at the Old Bailey on a video link from Belmarsh today, and it was during that hearing that the prosecution gave more details. There were reports last week that whoever shot Nathaniel was dressed as a motorcycle food delivery courier. Today, the prosecution said that the alleged killer was wearing a crash helmet, gloves, a distinctive orange Just Eat jacket, and was riding a stolen Honda moped. And according to the prosecution, Prempa was the getaway driver in the attack, which lasted just 20 seconds, was both premeditated and targeted. He's due in court again in May. The 17-year-old charged with Nathaniel's murder has a court date on Friday. Just Eat says it's helping Scotland Yard with its inquiries, but there's no evidence to suggest that the killer was an employee.
All right, Simon, thank you. But first, as we approach the 5th anniversary of the first COVID lockdown, new figures from TfL show there are almost 500,000 fewer London commuters than there were pre-pandemic. 5 years after being asked to work from home, it seems many of us don't want to give it up completely. A policy designed to control the spread of the virus looks here to stay, despite the best efforts of businesses to get workers back to the office. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
5 years ago, Matt's fledgling business had the worst possible start. Soon after he set up his coffee stall in the city, he was hit by the hammer blow of lockdown.
After the first few days, we sort of went down to making 5 coffees a day. So everyone was told to stay at home, work from home. So yeah, we had to close.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
Boris Johnson's lockdown order turned London into a ghost town as former commuters learned to work from home. 5 years on, many still do, but it's not an automatic right.
It is always possible for an employer to reject a request to work flexibly, and it has to be based on specific grounds, like it might impact the performance or quality, it may not be workable in some way.
On Monday, more than 300 intelligence analysts working for the Met are due to begin a second 2-week strike after being told they must do more days in the office. Scotland Yard says it's about delivering a better service for Londoners, but Anna, a union official, disagrees.
It's a box-ticking exercise, and I believe a lot of our members believe it's a way of controlling what work they're doing. They see it as being presenteeism. They don't see it as adding value to the work that they're doing and adding value to increase protection of Londoners.
In Clerkenwell, entrepreneur Eileen Burbage has just invested in new offices to try to encourage staff at her healthcare company to spend more days coming in.
I'm seeing that most people like to come into the office on Thursdays. We also see Tuesdays being relatively busy as well. The days in which we see the least amount of people coming into the office are probably Wednesday, maybe because people are mindful about Monday and Friday looking like it's a bit too convenient.
The company also pays for travel cards. New recruit Oliver is in 4 days a week.
It's really important to make sure you immerse yourself amongst your team to obviously build those relationships, hear off other discussions, picking up areas which will benefit you, implementing systems and just generally getting to have a feel of the place.
London's Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan believes central London has been hollowed out by work from home. Matt has noticed other changes.
So our busy days are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but it just feels like when people are in the office, they're sort of having more casual meetings, coming to coffee shops, It's less serious meetings in the office, more casual meetings outside of the office.
The hit on London's transport system from COVID ran into billions of pounds as commuters stayed away. And today it still carries fewer passengers than before. Simon Harris, ITV News.
Well, that was just one of the topics Simon will be discussing on tonight's Late Debate. Here he is to tell us what else is coming up.
On the Late Debate, I'll be joined by Danny Beales, the Labour MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, the Conservative MP for Romford, Andrew Rossendale, and Zoe Franklin, the Liberal Democrat MP for Guildford. As well as WFH, we'll talk about the government's proposed cuts to benefits and hear from the Slough MP, who chairs the Commons Defence Committee. I'll be talking to him about defence spending, JD Vance's apparent slur against British veterans, and whether military recruitment policies are too woke. That's the Late Debate here on ITV1 after news at 10.